Panelists, are you ready? Dali, you ready? Everyone ready? Okay. All right, ladies, gentlemen, non-binary folks, it's a pleasure to have you here for our youth policy consultation in Olympiad. It is a great honor to have this panel here with us. And I'd like to open up with a question. How is the world changed? In my opinion, the answer is simpler than you might think. All the time. And today, we have taken another step. 55,000 people from around the world have come up with solutions, real ones, to climate change. I'm talking about students. I'm talking about climate activists. I'm talking about young people. I'm talking about future engineers, future climate communicators, people who knew nothing about climate change, and people who are passionate about the environment. Everyone from all over the world have come together once a year in this event in our ClimateScience Olympiad to come up with solutions to climate change. I want to thank everyone who participated in the Olympiad. It's better? I want to thank everyone who participated in the Olympiad and for putting so much. What? I want to thank everyone who participated in the Olympiad and who put so much effort into coming up with the solutions. Win or lose, this is a stepping stone for a future that is going to help solve climate change. Win or lose, you know who you are. In life, there are a lot of challenges and wonders, but there's one certainty, which is that all of you and everyone have a lot to give. And with that, I would like to give it back to our wonderful moderator, Nevine, and our distinguished guests and panelists, and most importantly, our extremely important finalists who have joined us here in the Zoom. Thank you very much.
Welcome, everyone. So just as a quick brief as to what climate science is and what the Olympiad is. So climate science is the world's most advanced climate education platform, tackling the biggest obstacle in achieving a sustainable future: climate education. They are on a mission to make learning about climate change reliable and easy to understand. They have online resources loved by millions in 190 countries. And today we are here to celebrate the Olympiad, an annual competition. The Climate Science Olympiad puts youth in the shoes of global change makers. They become leaders who ideate practical yet ambitious solutions to fight climate change. From 55,000 young people from 190 countries again, the panel will host the top 3 finalists from the Olympiad who will discuss with government negotiators with us here on the panel about the practicalities of actually implementing their solutions in real life. I'm excited to learn more about these solutions from our finalists. From the first team, Judith Ko and Song-Gi Ho. Second team, Alexandra Pilz and Eleonore Vecchioli. And finally, Netra, Karthigeyan. Welcome all. We also have with us our amazing panelists with us. So starting off, we have Mohamed Radiddaoui, who is a climate negotiator specifically on technology. We have our Olympiad judge this year, so Dr. Ryna. And finally, we have Evelyn Addor, who's also a youth negotiator. So the way this panel is going to work, we're first going to hand it off to our Olympiads to give a short presentation, just 3 minutes, outlining their solutions. And then we get to ask them some questions. You, the panelists, the negotiators, get to give them some feedback on the real-life implementation of their solutions, and they can also ask you questions. So that's the first segment of our panel, followed by an open-ended discussion, and then we'll go back to some more policy-specific questions. So starting off with Judith and Ho Song-Gi, you have the floor.
Hi everyone, just check, can you hear us?
Can we be heard?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
Great. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. We are Judith and Songi from Singapore. So Judith is a second-year student at the National University of Singapore. I'm currently serving in the military.
So for this Olympiad, we chose the topic of transitioning Omaha, Nebraska into a net zero city by 2050. As Nebraska's largest city, Omaha contributes significant carbon emissions that we aim to reduce. However, both Omaha State of Nebraska and its mayor, Gene Stothert, are from the Republican Party. So therefore, while the mayor recently signaled some appetite for climate action, radical solutions that might work elsewhere else may not be as feasible given this context.
So upon thorough research, we found 3 key sources of Omaha's carbon emissions, which we then targeted.
The first carbon source is the energy industry. 51.7% of Omaha's energy actually comes from coal. And our solution to this is to shift to renewables. Nebraska has some of the highest solar and wind potentials in the US. It also has legislation that mandates that all energy utilities be publicly owned, making decarbonization administratively easier.
To achieve this, Omaha's Public Power District should commission new renewable projects, especially solar power, which has been historically neglected. It can aim to completely phase out coal by 2035 and reach net zero in the energy sector by 2040. One challenge we foresee is the intermittency of solar, also known as the duck curve. To address this, we suggest combining demand and supply side strategies. Peak demand can be moderated by using smart technologies like AI, which can be programmed to raise prices during peak periods. This market mechanism encourages households to spread out energy use. And on the supply side, we suggest casting a wider geographical net by tapping onto the Southwest Power Pool, which combines energy supply of USA's Midwestern states. Interstate collaboration allows high production in one state to compensate for reduced production in another.
So the next carbon source is westward suburbanization. Suburbanization converts sinks into sources and accentuates car dependency. To reduce this, we suggest an ambitious rebranding of Omaha as a biophilic city. This term is used to refer to a city that fulfills the innate human affinity for nature. For example, we envision large rooftop greenery and communal gardens that ameliorate the urban heat island effect and soften the urban landscape. By increasing livability, we draw residents back to the city, boosting economic activity. So to attain this, we suggest subsidizing retrofits of green architecture and legislation mandating that all new developments replace at least 2/3 of the greenery they remove.
We will also expand green transport to alleviate car dependency. The Omaha Rapid Bus Transit should electrify its bus services and provide additional routes beyond its purely east-west route that excludes Black majority North Omaha, in the interest of social equity.
And lastly, the final emitter is the methane from the cattle industry. So importantly, we note that methane tends to be overlooked in the net zero discourse in favor of carbon. Our solution we propose is manure management. We will capture methane as biogas by leveraging on the infrastructure and expertise from Omaha's existing human waste biogas plant.
How shall we incentivize this? By introducing a market mechanism like a green labeling scheme so eco-conscious consumers can also support green agricultural practices.
So besides these, we also propose 2 supporting measures. The first is to plug data gaps. We found Omaha does not have an official carbon budget, which makes it impossible to monitor net zero progress. We advocate for the partnering of universities to expand scholarship on Omaha-specific climate issues and construct this carbon budget. We will also leverage global and regional networks like the Global Covenant of Mayors or the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group for the sharing of best practices, climate research, and data.
It is important to view our solutions not in isolation, but as a cohesive whole. The solutions synergize and reinforce each other's success. For instance, biogas production from cattle manure supports decarbonization not only as an additional carbon-light fuel, but as a relatively stable source of energy that balances out solar intermittency.
With these solutions, we aim to transform Omaha into a cutting-edge net zero city in a socially just and sustainable manner. So while our solutions may focus specifically on Omaha, it is our hope that the principles and ideas we bring up here can serve as inspiration for others to contextualize our solutions to suit the needs of their country for a greener and more sustainable future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us an overview of your fantastic solution. So just as a question specifically on one of the solutions you posed, which was the use of technology. So in your scheme, you were embedding AI, the use of a smart grid, to name a few solutions. Do you think, based off your research, that technology-based solutions are more effective than traditional ones?
Well, Thank you for the question. So I think for us, we do believe that technological fixes such as smart grids, renewable technologies, or electric vehicles are no more or less effective than traditional sources. It just depends on the unique context and situation that is posed. So we actually believe that these two solutions are equally important and can even complement each other. So for instance, there's the traditional solution of a carbon tax. So while this may raise the price of carbon and push companies and individuals to slash their emissions, the effect would not be as significant if we lack the technological solutions, such as renewables, to open up new ways to make this reduction possible in the first place. And in turn, this tax, of course, creates the impetus for businesses to adopt these technologies. So this example here kind of illustrates that technological and traditional solutions can work in tandem to complement and reinforce each other's success. And on top of that, I think another interesting element that we also thought about was perhaps the temporal element. So for example, the carbon capture and sequestration technologies, also known as CCS, are currently still in their infancy, and they're really, really new. And they may not be able to scale up at the rate needed to combat the climate crisis. So the traditional method of conservation and restoration of rainforests and mangroves may, at this point in time, actually be more cost-effective in the meantime. Yeah, and in time, CCS may actually develop enough to play a significant role to complement existing reforestation efforts. But ultimately, we feel like because countries are already falling short, of the 45% emissions reduction by 2030 goal, and to cap warming at global warming at 1.5 degrees, we are going to need all the viable solutions we can get, be it technological or traditional, and they should work together to complement each other.
Fantastic. So I think I'm going to hand it over to our panelist, specifically Mohamed, who focuses on technology. So you have the floor to just give your feedback.
So hello, guys. First, congratulations for making it here. Congratulations to creating such an innovative project. It is very empowering to see fellow young people building such innovations in tech and climate technologies. My main question here would be, if you want to export the same model of your project, what would be one main challenge and one main opportunity that you can see?
I think that the exportation of like our plan that there will be some restrictions. So if you look at certain countries, right, at like their economic sectors, they might not have a very strong like agricultural sector, such that our manure management strategies will be particularly useful. But we think that in general, looking across the globe, biophilic cities is something that most cities can definitely adopt. Most cities currently restrict themselves to like ground level greenery, like parks and sculptures, and simple changes can result in like big changes that improve urban livability. It was like wildly successful in our own home country, Singapore. I think, for example, like the Oasia Downtown Hotel, for example, it incorporated so much greenery that it actually there was like 1,100% of green cover replaced from what it was initially removed for its construction.
Great. Perhaps any of our other negotiators have some feedback to give them on their solution. So their solution, besides technology, also included a more ambitious decarbonization plan, and they were also really cautious of the social implications on Omaha. They were taking into account gentrification and other impacts on urban development. So perhaps if you have any feedback or anything that any advice you can give them in general about their solutions. I know you read them, and as a judge, perhaps you have something to say.
Yeah, thank you. Also want to congratulations to you guys first. I was the final judges, but I didn't kind of listen to their project. So I think it's also great to hear your presentation. So I think that it's really net zero targets, what we're talking about today, is really challenging. I think we should admit to that. It's like a really a goal that probably we haven't figured out how to do it exactly because there's not experience on, in history, like how to do that. So I think it really needs fundamental changes of the entire system of the society. And I think what your comments about, we should take all the available technology into the picture and thinking about all the different pieces of the society, even small things can contribute to the, the last unit of emission. I really like that perspective. And I think you did a really great job, really well done about the specific case. All the great comments, I guess.
Hello. Yeah. So for me, I think you've done well. So congratulations. I have a question. I don't know if I can ask. So my question is, with your great ideas about technology, how will you propose technology transfer from developed countries to developing countries in our effort to mitigate climate change?
Yeah, we think that technology transfer is really, really important, especially when you're looking at like the dynamics going on right between developed countries, which have most of like the advanced technology as well as the intellectual property rights that come with it, and developing countries that really need those technologies and could actually make use of them to leapfrog and advance that. So we think that transfer is really, really important. Of course, we need to take into account that there are some like intellectual property restrictions, but we believe that, and we will call on developed countries to be a little bit more lenient with that, considering that climate change is such it's an existential problem. And as going by the rate that we are going at, right, with like emissions set to rise by 10% if the national determined contributions are even met. We are at an urgent state. So I think that it is important to let go of at least some bit of the short-term profit in favor of technology transfers. This can be facilitated by multinational corporations. We think that local national universities, there can be partnerships between like them, the exchanges, as well as at the government level when policymakers go for exchanges. I think that these are some of the ways in which like this knowledge, this technology can be possibly transferred. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much to both Judith and Song Yiho. So we're going to move on now to our other team, Alexandra and Eleonore. So you have the floor to give us your brief presentation.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm 15 and I live in London. And today we'll be presenting.
Hi, I'm Eleanor. Sorry, hi, I'm Eleanor. I'm also from London. I'm also 15.
Our proposal comprehensively outlines how to adapt to the effects of climate change in Haiti. Our top priority when building this proposal was to make it possible with today's technology and today's capabilities. Haiti suffers from rising sea levels and extreme weather events, so our proposal aims to mitigate and adapt to these effects. The first section of our proposal concentrates on land reclamation. Land reclamation is when land is reclaimed from beneath a body of water such as oceans and lakes. The land reclaimed is often very fertile due to nutrients within the body of water, so we will easily find private buyers to invest in order to fund the land reclamation. The Netherlands have reclaimed 97,000 hectares of land using a dike building method where a section of land is isolated by the dike and then drained, so we will use that approach. The waterway drain will be treated and reused for agricultural and municipal purposes, powered by wave energy using point absorber technology. The land reclaimed will be used for agricultural purposes as the negative effects of land reclamation in the past correlate with urban use. One of Haiti's main exports is rice, and since it is vulnerable to rising sea levels, we will implement salt-resistant rice crops to ensure the stability of the harvest. This will provide a stable income and stable jobs for locals. As salt-resistant crops are often more expensive than normal crops, we, along with private partners, will subsidize the prices of the crops to encourage farmers to invest. After 5 years, farmers will have implemented the crop and begun to harvest seeds, so prices will no longer be subsidized. The land reclamation will take place in Gonaives on the northeastern side of the island as it is the most vulnerable. Since the majority of people living in Gonaives work in the informal economy, running a government scheme would help transfer the economy to the formal sector, as the government would be the employer and so could directly levy taxes. This is critical as 55% of Haiti's wealth is found in the informal sector. We chose Gonaives over Port-au-Prince, the capital, as Port-au-Prince is the country's main harbour city, and so the surrounding land needs to remain deep to accommodate ships. The coastline of the new land will be lined with mangroves to dissipate wave energy, which Eleanor would expand on.
So mangroves are an efficient and cost-effective way to battle rising sea levels and extreme weather events. Their thick and dense root networks obstruct the flow of water, increasing the friction the water faces. Similarly, mangroves reduce wind speed, thus lessening both the effects of storm surges and hurricanes. Historically, Haiti has had a large mangrove barrier protecting it. However, it has significantly diminished as locals have cut down trees to provide timber and wood for combustions. This means that the once 1,000 hectare barrier protecting Haiti is now only 500 hectares. Our first policy in our mangrove adaptation program would be to ban the cutting down of these trees and employ locals to plant more mangrove trees. This would be funded by the United Nations Environmental Programme, aiming to plant 100 hectares in the first 5 years and gradually increasing over each year. Mangroves are a precious ecosystem and greatly increase fish population. To ensure the sustainability of our scheme in the long term, we would exempt fish fished in mangrove plantations from VAT, which currently stands at 10% in Haiti, and replace it with a 5% tax, whose sum would be directly reinvested into a fund, which would be in charge of maintenance and development of the mangrove plantation. If too many fish are fished, which we can track by the number of rebates claimed, we can impose a temporary moratorium on fish in the area until it returns to a sustainable level. The lower value of tax compared to that of VAT would encourage public support for the scheme, helping people see the benefits of growing a mangrove population and galvanize public support for the ban on mangrove cutting. The tax will also enable the scheme to function in the long term, as it would become self-funding and not require external subsidies. Through the implementation of land reclamation and the planting of mangroves, Haiti will greatly decrease its vulnerability to climate change and concurrently make the government's sources of income stronger.
Thank you so much. So I think you gave us a lot of detail about your economic solutions. So your plan is largely targeted at the International Monetary Fund's economic policies. As a result, your solutions are largely economic. So I guess an open-ended question to our panelists as advice to both Eleanore and Alexandra. Where and how do you feel the environment and the economy and investments overlap?
So policies such as tax reductions and subsidies can greatly encourage developments in environmental fields. So for example, in Haiti, a strengthening in the environment can also result in a strengthening of the economy by creating sustainable jobs and protecting the Haitian agriculture industry. Additionally, external investment from foreign companies can be used to fund policies such as the land reclamation scheme, which Alex proposed. This enables a large number of people to be brought into the formal economy, which once again strengthens the Haitian economy. Localized tax reductions can also be used, including the local tax reduction on mangroves. And it has the potential to increase the support for climate initiatives in the future and thus enable more schemes to take place.
Any response from our negotiators?
Can you ask the question again?
So it's about, so their solution was largely about the overlap between the economic aspect and the environmental aspect for Haiti. So in general, a lot of their scheme was about adjusting Haiti's economy to adjust to the IMF's policies so that they get more funds. Do you feel that this is effective? Do you think that there's more opportunity for the economy and the environment to overlap?
Thank you. So, yes, the economy and the environment are intertwined. You know, one cannot stand on its own because we need the environment to support the economy. For example, all the natural resources that we use For example, coming from my country, Ghana, we depend so much on the natural environment. And that's what moves our economy. Our economy is based on agriculture. So you can't separate the two. It's one, it's together. So for the economy, the interlinkage between the two, you need policies, environmental policies that can protect the environment, at the same time also make sure that people living in the communities have their livelihood protected. So that would be my simple advice. With the IMF, it's a bit technical because coming from my end, some of their restrictions can also affect how the livelihood of people, and also at the same time put some restrictions of the government, which in the other way protect the public purse, coming from a country like Ghana. So you can't really, I can't really stand here and give like an advice on that because it's strictly policy. But then what I can say is that the environment and the economy cannot live without each other. The two has to intertwine, and policies has to be made to govern the two in such a way that it benefits the citizens at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any alternating views, any contrasting views?
Maybe to add another point on what my colleague here was saying, I think if we can benefit from the decentralization happening in every local authority and push for local municipalities or communal financial decentralization to link that to the local environmental problems. Once we make that clear on a local level, then we can show the public sector that there is an overlapping environmental and economic problem. And once that that is clear, we can move forward on pushing the public sector on providing finances and financial support in general.
Hello again. I think we met at the finals, but congratulations on the great presentation. So I really agreed on both panelists already the points made here. I really think when we talk about the environment, the economy, how we decarbonize, I feel like all of these can be all in a shared plan. It's not like a one trade-off with each other. Like with a really well-structured strategy, we can achieve all of those goals together with a really sustainable economy model, and also doing it a low carbon and also good for the environment. And I think in terms of the finance question, I guess a lot of the is a really huge amount of finance will be needed for the transformation. So I think it's not just public money. I think actually a lot of the resources, we can direct private sector resources to achieve the goal together. That will be, a more needed way. I feel like, and not just limited to what we are putting on the table from the public sector. Yeah, and well done.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to move on to our final Olympiad. Netra, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Netra Karthigeyan, and I'm joining you today from Bengaluru, India. I'm currently 14 years old, and I'm in grade 9. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's glad to meet all of you here at COP27. Today, I'm going to present my solutions for the issue of the rising ocean levels in Haiti, which I proposed during the ClimateScience Olympiad finals. So the rising oceans is an issue that's faced not just by Haiti, but also by other small island developing states and developed nations as well. So we're all in this together. The proposals I have suggested for Haiti are all low cost, and some of them can also be implemented in other countries. So let me walk you through my 4 proposals. The first one is reforestation. Cultivation of fruit trees, which thrive in the tropical regions, is an ideal way to implement reforestation. Some of the benefits of reforestation are they improve soil drainage, they prevent wind erosion, They address nutritional requirements and provide high returns from exotic fruit export. My next solution is mangrove farming. Mangroves can cover vast areas quickly and hence are extremely beneficial. They reduce wave height by up to 66% and thus prevent coastal erosion. They are 5 times more beneficial than land-based forests in carbon absorption. They also have the ability to elevate land levels, and they act as nesting sites for aerial and marine animals. Apart from all these, they also aid in promoting tourism due to the mangrove-induced habitat. My third proposal is coral farming. Coral farming is an avenue that strengthens both the ecology and the economy of the country. The benefits of coral farming are they help in wave energy dissipation. Moreover, they enhance fisheries as an industry. They have the ability to improve water quality, and sometimes corals are also used in a variety of medicinal drugs like antivirals. If all these benefits of coral aren't enough, they're also used valuably in the semi-precious gems market. My last proposal is floating houses. Floating houses are an adaptation that combat both the rising oceans and the loss of habitable land. Floating houses are submergence-proof, and they also provide protection against storms. Because of this alternative lifestyle, we can expect some foreign investment into these floating homes for a vacation home. And also, floating homes eliminate the need of relocation. If all these proposals are implemented, eventually the revenue generated can be invested further for the country's development. This can be done by investing in tidal turbines and aquaponics farming. Due to climate change, like any country having a vast coastline, their biggest challenge is also from the same coastline that graces it. The low-cost adaptations I've suggested boost the economy of Haiti by increasing exports and establishing the tourism industry. We are known by the challenges we combat. I'm confident that the proposals I've outlined will help Haiti move from a country battered by climate change consequences to a country that leverages on these very challenges, turns them around, and establishes itself as an important country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So your plan is similar in a way to Alexandra and Eleanor's in the sense that you utilize the economic dimension with exportation and also tourism. So you talk a lot in your plan about Haiti's competitive advantages in exportation, and you talk about its up-and-coming tourism industry. So where do you think the possibilities within tourism lie? And can you elaborate further on how tourism can help the environment?
Right. So according to me, to set up the tourism industry in Haiti, it's going to take about 5 years for the groundwork. So I'd start with having the fruit tree cultivation. So this is basically turning the wheels towards our journey for establishing Haiti as a tourism hub. So once we get fruit exportation running, then the revenue generated from there can also be parallelly used for mangrove farming. So as I said in my presentation, cultivation of mangroves is pretty easy. So they can reach like 2 meters in less than 2 years, which is pretty fast. And also hybrid varieties of fruit trees can yield fruits in 2 to 3 years. So these two solutions provide benefits pretty fast. And these, the revenue generated from these two can then be invested in coral farming. So the modern coral farming methods are 50 times faster than the traditional natural growth of corals. So coral farming can then be used for exportation and also for coral viewing. And also the mangrove cultivation provides, like I said, a nesting site for aerial and marine animals, and thus a suitable place for aviaries and for fishing. And thus we can get the tourism industry started. And all the revenue generated from these 3 proposals can then be put in building of floating houses. Thus we can also house the tourists on the very ocean, which provides them all the benefits.
Thank you. Just very briefly, before we move into the open-ended discussion, can any of our panelists give us their honest take? And remember, it's okay to be critical. Being critical is how both the Olympiads and all of us can develop in terms of our knowledge and our acquisition of it. Sorry about that. What's your opinion about this take, the take of involving the tourism sector to help the environment?
Yeah, I think also kind of a really well done presentation. I think the tourism, it's definitely a direction like a Heidi can explore. I feel like, you know, diversify the economy to a more sustainable, like aligned with our environmental goal, climate goal, it's very important. So I think it's just the implementation detail, right? Kind of how you make sure the tourism from all the steps can be sustainable as well, right? Like it's not like the energy intensive industry, so it's more like a service that oriented. So it's already less carbon intensive. But I think in terms of implementing the entire supply chain, kind of there will be long distance travel, like, right? So that will include some of the international shipping or international aviation. So that also have emission impact. So I think if we're thinking about the entire supply chain, you know, that maybe have a broader scope of emission implication, not just for Heidi. But I think those more broader view maybe will be helpful to think about it. But I think your plan, like yeah, it's really good, well presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Her name Netra. So, and wonderful presentation. So I think that when it comes to tourism and the environment, you can't, the tourism sector can be one way of promoting environmental conservation. For example, if you have ecotourism parks, and it helps the community and then the government to protect those lands. If not for ecotourism parks, for example, in Ghana, we have some forests like the Kakum National Forest and the Tiwa Forest that we have reserved as ecotourism parks. And due to that, the communities around it are not encroaching into the forest, because at the end of the day, the tourists will come to those forests and the communities around them can sell some of their goods and services to the tourists. So they make money. So instead of clearing that portion of land for agricultural purposes, they are willing to conserve that portion of land, and it serves as a great carbon sink, which leads to mitigation of climate change. So depending on how you want to relate tourism to the environment, it can be good. The other thing is also that it can have negative impacts. For example, when, let's say the beaches, tourists come and then they use plastics and then they leave it on the beaches and it washes into the ocean, which means that it's polluting the ocean. So it's a two-way stream. It can have very positive impact for the economy, for the local environment, even for the indigenous people living in such forest-free communities. But also, if tourism is not done sustainably, it can have a lot of negative impact. So when we are looking at it, maybe we just take another look and look at it in a two-way stream and see how best we can mitigate the negative impact of tourism. But I think conserving the environment for tourism is a great way of conserving the environment and also protecting the environment. Thank you.
Great job, Netra. Of course, wonderful presentation. My question here is, I see your inspiration from the Maldives infrastructure and how is that already implemented and successfully implemented somewhere. However, I see that when the same example was implemented in some other zones, such as, for example, the Gulf countries, we see that the environmental impact wasn't that positive. So my question is, in your approach, what would be different from the way it was implemented in some other region? What would be climate friendly in your approach?
I think Haiti has an advantage. So floating houses and establishing tourism properly is only at the end of all these, when all these proposals are implemented. And Haiti has the advantage of its close proximity to the US. So if you compare the distance between Haiti and Florida is only about 833 miles, which is pretty close. So since it's very close to a developed nation, we can expect if we probably have a better tourism developed in Haiti, we can expect it to be more functional compared to the other regions.
Okay, thank you so much, Netra, and wonderful job again.
Thank you to all of our panelists. So we're going to move into an open-ended discussion now. And I think we can all agree that the majority of the feedback was positive, right? There are solutions. I know, Dr. Ryna, you've read them. They're very, very well thought out. There's every single aspect that you may think, hey, maybe this is wrong, maybe that's wrong. Even with your question about tourism, there was a backup plan to it. There was a solution and environmental consideration. So my question is, how come youth that had little time to prepare these solutions, these very well thought out action plans with statistics, with backed up knowledge, with several schemes and several ways to combat the same solution, how come they, with their limited knowledge, with their age, they're 14, 15, 16, how come they can come up with these solutions that governments can't? What's happening as youth negotiators that have a seat on the table? Why are their solutions, why are their tactics that are obviously very well thought out not being implemented in real life? What's going wrong?
In my opinion here, I think there's a general fear from private sector and governments when it comes to NBS, natural-based solutions. When we see the outcomes of the United Nations disaster risk reduction that happened a few months ago in Bali in partnership with the Indonesian government, we see that one of the outcomes of the UN agencies stakeholders was that we link always the natural-based solutions to all the risks that are coming up there. So I think that as young people, as young researchers or innovators, we need to rethink the role of our institutions, the role of our local actors, and we need to make ourselves, through the universities, through academic research, the origin of the research and development. We are the source of the innovation, and the government needs to take the role of the incubator, just the financial support and the capacity building support. So we need to understand the contrast between the understanding of the importance of the natural-based solutions, but also the fear of the private sector and the government from investing in these solutions.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I feel like when I listened to the presentation, I was also amazed, like how at their age, kind of with the time, have all the knowledge to develop a really good plan. I think that's really good on a grade on all the teams, like really well done. I think in terms of compare that to reality, we have a plan and how we implement it. I think they're actually not. Maybe there's 1,000 steps still in between. Like also implementation is a big theme for this COP. Like we want to talk about no longer just the plan. We want to make sure it's implemented. So I feel like that what was already being mentioned, like we need to not just have the finance, there need to have the the institution like in place, all the aspects probably of our society now need to be changed. So I feel like the plan is really well laid out that provide a guidebook for the action. Yeah, but I feel like in implementation there are a lot more to do. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So I would say three things. One, finance. Two, the lack of political will. And three, socio-cultural environment. So finance, I mean, you can have all the beautiful policies on paper. We can come to COP, as a negotiator, we can negotiate all the deals. But if there is no money, the money is not given out, especially to developing countries, to implement these policies, then it remains on paper. If there is no political will from our leaders to really commit and walk the talk, and it's all the plans, all the policies still remain on paper. And also the third one, the cultural, social cultural norms where young people are not given a seat at the decision-making table. It's also preventing young people from bringing out all these brilliant ideas and to make it into the policy. So if you develop a policy as a young person and at the end of the day, you are not consulted when the government or the international community is doing policies, then how do you get your ideas into the policy document for it to be implemented in the first place? So finance is a big challenge when it comes to implementation. Until we solve that, nothing is going to be done. Until we have the political will like we had for COVID. When COVID happened, the whole world was in a hurry to solve it. You see every politician, every president in every country quickly had to come up with innovations to handle COVID at a go. But we see climate change as something that is very far from us, or environmental issues as something very far from us. So we don't have the political will to really do something about it. We pretend every year that we are doing something about it, but at the end of the day, nothing is being done. And if we don't change our social cultural norms and allow young people to speak up more, to consult them, then nothing gets to be done. So these are the three things that I think is inhibiting young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answers. I still think, though, having read the actual plans and the solutions that the finalists posed, and also the other ones, not just from the top three, they really did take into consideration the economic implications of their solutions. A lot of the solutions that I read and that our Olympiads posed, were going around the whole idea of finance. They were low finance solutions, low resource solutions. So I think if they can come up with these solutions, the ones that can work around the challenges, certainly governments can as well. So again, what is that barrier? Maybe it's the fear that you mentioned in regards to the private sector. What is that fear? What will it take to overcome that fear? With the example of COVID-19 and the urgency the world had to solve COVID-19 and tackle it, what will it take for the world and for governments to have that same sense of urgency towards climate change as they did for COVID-19, as they do for world conflicts? What will it take from your perspective as a youth negotiator?
I really think the problem, even when it comes to finance, it's not the lack of resources. I really think that the resources exist, the finance exists. It's just that the political framework is not functional. For example, when we check the joint annual report of the TEC, the Technological Executive Committee, and the CTCN, the Climate Technological Center and Network, we will find the Republic of Korea model of 2021, when the Republic of Korea decided to lead the cooperation on the technological transfer in East Asia. So basically, what they did basically is that they made the partnership operational between the GCF and the CTCN. So basically, they allowed more South-South collaboration, South-South cooperation, and even like collective research in the region. So we already have an example, a functional example of a model of a group of countries that could work together to access resources more, to go forward with technological transfer and technological development. And it just happened 1 year ago. So what we can do is that for every sub-region to adopt the same model, to import it, to find some sort of coordination between these countries and to allow themselves to access the resources that are existing and that are even more increased every year after COP. And we only have to better find the framework and the political cooperation systems so we can better access the transfer of technology and the collective research. So basically, I think it is not a problem of resources, it's just about the framework.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great comment about, you know, we are not lacking the resources. I also feel like the you mentioned about the urgency of the problem. I feel like the research or kind of the science has been keep talking about how urgent it is, but the sense is different than COVID. Like kind of the, you know, the problem we're facing is still is a long-term thing that although we're already seeing increasingly about, you know, extreme weathers, all the flood or kind of the heat wave, but the urgency is still not there yet. I feel like it's not like we are facing the COVID, everybody is affected right now already. So that sense can, you know, make people being reluctant to change. And I think, you know, we just have the tendency to continue on the current path because it's easy and change is hard. And when we don't feel that urgency, like, you know, we just continue and we're making maybe incremental changes. But I feel like all the young people on the teams and doing all the amazing work, they will be, you know, more affected by climate change in the future. So I think it's really important to bring them into the conversation.
Just to add, not to sound too political, or I mean, I don't want to sound like that, but I just think that developed countries feel like climate change is something that is far from them, and that at the end of the day, they have all the resources and the technology to adapt. And so they really don't care much about the impact of climate change. And then when it comes to mitigation, they also think that they don't want to cut down their carbon because they want developing countries who are emitting very low to now be the ones doing the mitigation work, just because they feel like, oh, we can adapt easily. For example, when you relate it to COVID, when they realized that it was affecting the developing world more than the developed world more than the developing world. For example, in Ghana, I can say confidently, we suffered very little from COVID. It was like it didn't really happen to us. But when the West realized how urgent it is for them and their people, the rate at which their own people were dying, then they had to quickly do something about it. But one thing they failed to realize is that when Africa, for example, goes down, the whole world goes down. Because Africa is the hub of the world, is the heart of the world. All the food we eat, even the phones we use, the whatever resources that you use for the electronics in the phone is from Africa. So if you don't do something about climate change now and help the people that are providing you with the resources that you need, the continent that is serving as the carbon sink for the emissions that you are emitting, at the end of the day, we don't suffer alone. We are not going to suffer alone. And when the catastrophe hits, you may be surprised. Africa has always found a way to adapt to situations. And I'll tell you for a fact that even when it comes to, I don't want to sound political, but just a little bit of, maybe I'm going off track, but sorry. So when it comes to like adapting, we may not have the technology, but in a way, we always find natural-based solutions to adapt to situation. Even now, without the technology, gradually, our own indigenous knowledges, we are using it to adapt. And so when the West continues to think that climate change, the catastrophe of climate change or the adverse impact of climate change is so far from them, that is not true. And when it hits, and now we can all see it, then maybe they will have more political will to do something about it. And until that, maybe we all continue, and one day, Mother Nature will show us that, well, it's not only developing countries that are going to suffer, but everybody on the planet. Thank you.
Maybe to add a small comment on talking about the climate urgency and how it affects people or not, I really think when comparing it to the COVID pandemic and how it affected people, in the end, it depends on how the global north decides to communicate on things. For example, in COP27 here we have more lobbyists on fossil fuels than negotiators. So the way we decide and the way the global north decides to communicate on things and to make things a priority is the cause that we already got over the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, but we're still questioning if the climate change is real or not. So it is just a matter of how the people in power decide to communicate on these vital issues that are hurting us and affecting us in different ways, depending on where we belong. So I really think it's not about the societal decision or on how it affects us in real life, but more about how people in power decide what is more important than what is not.
I guess I would want to shift the focus again to our Olympiads for a second. So how do you feel being 14, 15, 16, coming up with these very well thought out solutions? How do you feel that governments aren't implementing those solutions? How do you feel as a member of the youth that the people that are in charge don't have people like you on the seat of the table? Using your examples and research to back up your claims, feel free to go ahead to any of the finalists.
Okay, so thank you for that question. I think firstly I would establish that I acknowledge that I am only a student concerned about climate change. I don't know the intricacies, the political barriers, the nuances, the logistical, financial, administrative barriers that go behind. So I wouldn't try to say that I am so-called better than government leaders, because I acknowledge that there is work being done. Perhaps we may not see it. We may not think that it is enough. And well, okay, I guess there is consensus that it's not enough, but I wouldn't I guess look down or be condescending towards them. But at the same time, I will also try to push and urge for more political action on the part of policymakers who are in power. They have the mandate, they have the resources available to them. And I think that it's important to look past political differences between countries. So for example, one of them is the US-China Climate Accord. There was actually an agreement between both of these two superpowers to collaborate to combat climate change. However, after I believe it was Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, China called off this agreement entirely. So I think it's important that we look past these geopolitical differences, these ideological differences, because climate change is something that affects everyone immediately, and it's a very pressing, immediate concern which means that political ideologies and differences really shouldn't come in the way of this.
And I would add that in an age where like there's a lot of concern in policy making circles in governments that there's like groupthink, I think that it is all the more important that governments like listen to youth as a part of like civil society, as a possible source of information, inputs and feedback that they might miss out if they weren't listening to us. So I do think that even as Judith says, like we might not have all like the expertise, but yeah, we do have a perspective, a valuable perspective to provide, and I think the government should listen to us.
Thank you so much. So I think that's a good way to end our panel. Before handing it off to Michael, I would like to thank all of our panelists here today, to give a congratulations again to the Olympiad finalists on your excellent job. And thank you for your input and also the finalists' input. I hope everyone gained something out of this panel. So Michael, the floor is yours.
All right. So, what an exciting discussion. I'd like to thank the distinguished panelists for their honesty, for their boldness, and for their straightforwardness that they have delivered to us here today. I'd like to congratulate the finalists on fantastic solutions that I think we proved and reaffirmed here today again that anyone can solve climate change. This is the power of climate education. This is what happens when you invest in the future and the future that we want. Climate education and education in general is the ability to make better decisions. And if we have the capacity and if we have the knowledge to make those better decisions, I think it is a crime and I think it is unjust if people don't have equal access to that ability. And here's what we proved again. Anyone can solve climate change when given the right tools. I also think what was interesting from the panel is that a lot of times there's a lot of, we talked about lack of political will. We talked about different restrictions. We talked about different stuff. And sometimes people like to put themselves into mental prisons. But what happens when you think outside of the box and we've never been inside the box and you really do the thing that makes the most sense, you come up with the most amazing solutions. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you everyone who participated. And hopefully see you in Olympiad 2023 when we're going to take on the world again. Thank you very much.